What's up everybody, 3D Theory here, and we are here with the Starkiller helmet today. We are finally going to finish this thing up and get it nice and spray painted, glued together. We also have the spikes that go on top of the helmet here, like that. And this is the Starkiller helmet from Andor. So I'm really excited to get this thing started. Let's get to it. All right guys, there was one thing I wanted to mention, that this is the Starkiller helmet from Andor, and it was printed on two pieces. So from here on down, it was printed on the Creality CR10S5, and from that point up, it was printed on the Creality CR10 Smart. There were some issues with the S5, and that's why we finished it on the Smart. And we also have again, the knives that go on top of the helmet here, and you can see this particularly in Andor, and some of them are so long that it's going to require us to put two pieces together like this. And so we're going to jump right into gluing that all together and also welding it. All right guys, before I jump right into doing the helmet, I wanted to show you how I weld two pieces of PLA together. There's two techniques that I like to use, and I'm going to throw on this P95 here to protect my lungs from the smoke that's going to be coming out of it. All right guys, so I have my soldering iron here, and I'm going to weld these two random pieces together just to show you how I would do it. Now there's two techniques that I like to use. I like to either weld two pieces together as is, or use a small piece of filament to continue welding these together. And so I'll show you how I do it with the filament first. So what I do is I just straighten out the filament here, make sure my soldering iron is nice and hot. All right, so it looks like it's ready to go. Put it to where I'm going to be soldering it together. Then I'm just gonna start going and doing X patterns and melting it on to the PLA there. And you're pretty much also filling in the gap with that new filament. And I like to run over it just to smoothen it out just a little bit. And once that cools down, it's really solid and nice. So I just ripped these two here apart just to show you the next technique I'll use. The next technique is without an extra piece of filament. I like to just bring these two together and do an X pattern, as you can see here. And that actually holds really well. And again, you can also go over it like this, just to make sure it's nice and smooth, but be careful not to go in too deep. And there you go. That's how I weld those two pieces together, and is what I'm going to be using to weld the Starkiller helmet together. All right guys, so now that we got the Starkiller helmet here, there are a couple of points where I think would be best to start doing the welding. And by the way, I turned on a fan because it gets really smoky in here. But there are 2 points, and it's kind of hard to see on camera, but there are these discs on the side of the helmet that you can see on the inside, and I'm just gonna go ahead and start welding it in from there. All right guys, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start on those discs. All right guys, so we finished welding this together, and this is gonna be the first time I'm taking off the red tape here in a long time. I took off that P95 there. And you know what? I could also shut off this fan. This tape has probably been on this helmet for maybe 3 months, so I haven't really seen it without it. And look at that. That is looking really sweet. Boy, do I love this helmet. It's a really cool looking helmet, and I can only imagine how cool it's gonna look once we finish it and it's spray painted. There is a pretty big seam here, but there's nothing I can do about that. Other than that, I can try to sand it down as best I can and try to get some Bondo on there. It's gonna be the first time we're gonna use some car Bondo on there and try to shape it in. But other than that, boy, this thing is looking really, really cool. All right guys, so now we're finally ready to get these swords glued together. There's a little bit of wiggle room in these swords, so I'm gonna have to use some glue gun here, and it's gonna work really well. The reason why I wanna use this glue gun is because it fills up nice and thick, and it's just gonna fill in that extra space that's kind of just in there, allowing the swords to kind of wiggle in there. All right guys, the glue gun's ready to go. Let's get this show on the road. So I'm just gonna fill it up with some glue here. Okay. And I'm just gonna squeeze it in. Hold it in place for a sec. make sure it's aligned properly. All right, that is looking good. Okay, I'm gonna do the other ones now. Rinse and repeat. Just drop in some glue. Pop that on. We're gonna get some out on the sides, but that's okay. And I love how the glue gun is nice and thick. And you know, I think also that the heat from the glue gun may also help the PLA weld together since it's at such a low melting point with PLA. Let's go on to number 3, same thing. Okay, let's go on to number 4. Again, I'm just gonna drop some in there. Number 5, and the last one we need to glue together. So those are our 6 swords. We're gonna get them on the helmet, show you, and we'll continue the build with some extra unique things that we're gonna do with this one that we haven't done before. So I'll see you there in a minute. All right guys, so we got all the swords ready to go here. Here's the Starkiller helmet we just did. And so let's get this show on the road. I'm gonna put the big ones in first, as you see in Andor. And it was really fun modeling this thing. And it was kind of hard modeling these swords in because all the images are pretty blurry, but man, does it look really sweet. All right, that is looking really sweet. We're gonna be using the glazing and spot putty here to cover up all of our swords, as well as the Starkiller helmet seam that you see here. So let's get started on that. All right, so what we got is this little piece of foam that I cut off of some yoga block, and I'm gonna use that to kind of get the glazing and spot putty in the seams of the helmet, and maybe even use it on the swords here. It's brand new, so I'm gonna pop that open. All right, so I'm just gonna squeeze some out there. Okay, and this stuff dries pretty quick, so I'm gonna get to it. I've used wood filler in the past, and I wanted to get kind of a different feel with different materials, because the wood filler was okay. There was some issues I was having with it where it was too grainy, so I decided to try this glazing and spot putty, and it looks like it's doing the trick pretty well. And it's really quick. It sets in really fast. And let's see here. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and finish up this sword, and I'm gonna do the rest of the swords off camera because it's pretty much just gonna be redundant work. Basically what I'm gonna be doing to the other swords is exactly the same thing you see here. And what I'm doing is I'm just filling in those layer lines so it comes out nice and smooth. And I'm laying it on pretty thick because later on I'm gonna go in and do some sanding. I'm actually trying to sand only after applying this, the putty here. As opposed to sanding, then applying the putty. I'm trying to minimize the amount of sanding I have to do and testing to see if that idea works or not. It worked really well with the Lightyear laser blade that I made. If you guys go check out my videos from the past, I made the Lightyear laser blade, and I didn't do any sanding to the handle, and I just sprayed it with filler primer, and man, it worked really well. And it really cut the time of having to sit there and sand for hours. So it was really nice. It kept the project feeling fun, you know? It's actually really nice to work with this stuff. I'm having such a good time right now. Okay. All right guys, so there you have it. This is the sword that I just filled with the putty, and it's already dried. Literally, just you guys saw me put it on, and it's pretty much near completed drying. So that's amazing. And it's definitely cleared up those layer lines. I'm gonna have to sand a little bit to make all this extra stuff kind of go down. But other than that, it's looking really nice. All right. Now, I'm just gonna go straight to doing the helmet here. There's this big major seam we have that runs across the helmet like this. And then there's layer lines that I want to get rid of. So I'm just going to start with that seam. And get this all put in there. All right guys, so we pretty much finished the Bondo part up. I left the inner parts here kind of bare I think the filler primer will probably take care of it. Next part of this here is to just go ahead and sand it. All right guys, I'll see you then. All right guys, so I'm gonna throw on this P95 here and get to sanding all of this. All right guys, so before I start spray painting that helmet and the swords, I wanna hit it with some air, some compressed air. What I usually do is I'll give it a wash and then wait for it to dry, but the waiting part just takes way too long. And I wanna kinda get this done sooner than later. So after having sanded the putty off of it, I'm gonna hit it with some compressed air, then we're gonna get to doing the filler primer. All right guys, that about does it. The next part is simply to just get it filler primer. It's been a while, I cannot wait. All right guys, so now it's nighttime and we are just about to hang up all these swords, and I got the helmet hung up as well. But before we hang up the swords, we need to drill some holes right here so that we can stick some filament through and have it hanging so we can easily spray paint all of them. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I got those drilled out. And I'm just gonna drill these out now. All right, now that we got all those drilled out, grab the filament here, and one by one, I'm just gonna stick them through. All right, so I'm gonna go and hang these up, and I'll show you how the setup's gonna be. So here's my setup. I got my swords here, and I've strung them up to some filament right there, and as you can tell, there is the Starkiller helmet in the back on one of my light poles, and I just got some bubble wrap underneath it to give it some support right there. All right guys, we're just gonna spray it down with some filler primer here, so let's get to it. All right guys, so now that we're done spraying it with the filler primer, I'm gonna go ahead with this black paint here, this flat blacks, because I'm gonna end up spray painting all of them with a metallic color, so I wanna have a nice dark coat for that. All right guys, so we are pretty much ready to get the metallic paint on it, and I'm gonna start out with the gold because most everything on this helmet is gold, and including the swords. At least that's what I can interpret from the grainy images that are all over the internet from the Starkiller helmet on Andor in Luthen's shop. All right guys, I am a lot more pleased than I thought I would be with the results of this helmet so far. All that's left for us to do is to get the silver accents, and so I'm gonna go ahead and get those silver accents in on the helmet, and once that's done, we're gonna put that black visor in the background and we can call this thing complete. It's been so long, I'm so excited. And you know what, there's one thing I want to mention. I'm really happy with the look of the texture of this. Once it's finished, I'll show you, but it looks pitted. It looks like it's like a roughly made helmet, and I love it. All right guys, so we're gonna move on to the next step. We'll see you there. All right guys, so it is the morning and I taped off the helmet here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and spray paint the open areas, which is the teeth area and these like disc areas here, silver. All right guys, can't wait to unwrap this thing and show you. I'll see you back when it's ready. All right guys, so finally we got the Starkiller helmet finished up. It was a rough project, but nonetheless, we finally got it done. I'm happy with it. It can be, let's just say, a lot better, but I'm just happy we finished this thing because this thing had been lingering for some time. So, if you guys like this video, please click that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the comment section. Peace, love, and joy.